The restaurant buzzed with the low hum of conversations, the clinking of silverware, and jazz spilling softly from the ceiling speakers. A warm Los Angeles sun bled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, catching glints on champagne flutes and polished silver. Everything about the place screamed exclusivity, right down to the smugness of its staff. "Sir, this area is reserved for premium guests," the waiter said, narrowing his eyes at the man in the black hoodie and Chuck Taylors, who had just slid into the booth by the window. The man didn't even look up from the menu. "Yeah, I'm aware," he said coolly. The waiter, a tall, wiry guy with manicured fingernails and a clipped British accent, wasn't used to being brushed off. "I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to relocate to the bar area. That table's been pre-booked." The man slowly lowered the menu. Underneath the hood, a familiar face emerged. Snoop Dogg. No jewelry, no entourage, just his signature cool stare and a wry smirk. "I booked it," he replied, one brow arched. The waiter blinked. It didn't register immediately. The face was familiar, sure, but the outfit, the laid-back manner, the lack of showiness, he must have thought it was a look-alike. "I see. Well," the waiter cleared his throat, straightening his posture. "Even so, we do have a dress code, sir." Snoop leaned back, locking eyes with him. "You trying to tell me how to dress in my place?" A moment of silence. Then laughter erupted from the neighboring table, two women in designer sunglasses whispering and pulling out their phones. "Yo, is that really—" The waiter's posture stiffened. He stepped back. You're Snoop Dogg?" Snoop didn't answer. He just looked at the man like he already knew what was coming next. Another waiter rushed over, panic in his eyes. "Mr. Broadus!" "I didn't know you were coming in today. Let me get you your usual—" He looked at the first waiter and blanched. "What happened?" "This dude tried to kick me out my own booth," Snoop said flatly. The first waiter looked like he'd just swallowed glass. Your booth?" "He owns the damn restaurant," the second waiter hissed, barely audible. Snoop shrugged. "Not that I care." "I'm just trying to eat." The maitre d' appeared from behind the counter, clearly summoned by the silent wave of stress rippling across the floor. His eyes darted between the wrapper and the waiter. "Mr. Broadus," he said, giving a respectful nod. "Is there anything we can do to make your experience more comfortable?" Snoop chuckled, low and dry. "You can let your boy here keep talking." "I'm curious how far he'll go." The waiter looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. His face flushed a deep red. I had no idea." Snoop held up a hand. "Nah, don't backpedal now. Stand on that attitude you had a minute ago." The room had gone still. Phones were recording. Someone at the bar mouthed, "Oh, shit." And still, Snoop stayed seated, legs crossed, unbothered. The silence stretched like a drawn bow. Then he leaned forward, voice low and slow. "Lesson 1, he said. Don't judge a man by the hoodie, especially not when his name's on the lease." He snapped the menu closed. "Now go get me them biscuits you tell everyone's off menu. And make it quick, I got time today." The waiter stumbled back, muttering apologies. The energy in the room shifted. Some were stunned, others quietly clapped, but everyone was watching, and this was just the beginning. The door to the kitchen swung shut behind the waiter, cutting off the murmurs from the dining area. He leaned against the stainless steel counter, eyes wide, chest heaving. "Yo, what did you do?" asked Jay, one of the line cooks, wiping his hands on a towel. "I didn't know it was him, man," the waiter groaned. "He looked like some random guy off the street." Jay shook his head, chuckling. "You work at Doghouse and don't recognize Snoop when he walks in?" "He wasn't dressed like a VIP, the waiter muttered, pulling at his collar. "No chains, no security, no flashy entrance. Who does that?" Jay laughed again. "A real boss, man." Out in the dining room, the hum of chatter was picking back up, but the incident lingered like the scent of burnt garlic. Staff whispered about it in corners. Some laughed, some kept their heads down, trying to stay out of the blast radius. Back in the kitchen, the waiter paced. "Do you think he's going to fire me?" Jay paused. "Honestly? I don't know. Snoop's chill most of the time, but disrespect? Public disrespect?" He whistled. "You might want to start polishing that resume." The waiter gritted his teeth. His name was Thomas, 22, fresh out of culinary school and used to places that cared more about reputation than real connection. He'd only been at Doghouse for a month. Until today, it had been smooth sailing. Now, he could barely make eye contact with the others. "I didn't mean to offend him," Thomas muttered. "Didn't matter, you did." Jay walked off, leaving Thomas alone with the weight of his own mistake. Out front, Snoop sat with a tall glass of iced tea in hand, staring out at the city like nothing had happened. The maitre d' had tried offering him complimentary dishes, a new bottle of wine, anything to smooth things over, but he'd waved them off. "Let him bring it," Snoop had said, nodding toward the kitchen. 10 minutes later, Thomas returned, a tray balanced in his hands, jaw tight. "Your biscuits," he said, placing the plate down. Snoop looked up, slow. "These the real ones?" "Not the frozen kind," Thomas nodded once. "Made fresh every day." Snoop took a bite, closed his eyes, chewed slowly. Then he nodded. "Ate. These hittin'." Thomas didn't know if that was good or bad. Snoop leaned back. "You ever stop to think who you're talking to before you open your mouth?" Thomas swallowed hard. "I made a mistake." "No doubt, but mistakes got weight. Especially when you swinging them at strangers." Thomas shifted on his feet, clearly uncomfortable. "I didn't mean to come off arrogant." Snoop raised an eyebrow. "But you did, and it wasn't just to me." Thomas frowned. "What do you mean?" "I read reviews, man. People talk. You got a pattern." The words hit harder than any shout would have. He opened his mouth, then closed it. "You want to stay here?" Snoop asked. Thomas hesitated. "Yes, I do." "Then fix it. Not for me, for them." He pointed subtly to the diners around them. Thomas looked out and saw faces. People he barely noticed before. A woman with her toddler, an older couple holding hands, a group of young guys laughing over ribs. He nodded slowly. "I will." Snoop smiled faintly. "Then get to it." Thomas turned, walking back to the kitchen, unsure whether he'd just been warned or forgiven. Maybe both. The next day, Thomas showed up 30 minutes early. The kitchen was still quiet, lights low, ovens cold. He slipped on his apron in silence, replaying Snoop's words over and over in his mind. "Fix it. Not for me, for them." He didn't sleep much. Guilt twisted in his stomach all night. He'd worked hard to land a position in a restaurant like Doghouse, but he hadn't worked hard enough on himself. By the time the rest of the team trickled in, Thomas was already prepping stations, filling the sink, wiping counters. Jay stopped in the doorway, blinking. "You okay, man?" Thomas nodded. "Just starting fresh." Jay eyed him for a second, then gave a slow nod. "All right, let's see." Out front, the lunch crowd was already forming, workers on their break, tourists in sneakers, a pair of influencers filming their every bite. Doghouse didn't just serve food, it served a vibe, a brand, a feeling. And now Thomas finally understood what that meant. He greeted a couple at the door with a smile, genuine, no forced politeness. "Welcome to Doghouse. Table for two?" They nodded. "Window or booth?" "Window, if that's okay," the woman said, almost apologetically. He led them there himself, pulled out the chair, offered water without waiting to be asked. Later, he brought over their entrees with a simple, "Hope you all enjoy this. Chef said the brisket's singing today." They smiled. It felt good, better than snapping at someone or putting on airs. By 2 p.m., Thomas was moving like he belonged, refilling glasses, checking in with tables, even helping clear plates when the busboys were behind. Snoop hadn't come in, but somehow his presence lingered. Not in a flashy, superstar way, more like a quiet expectation. At the end of the shift, Thomas found Jay leaning against the back wall of the alley, sipping a Coke. "You on something?" Jay joked. Thomas smirked. "Just trying to be better." Jay gave him a look. "You were actually kind of good today." Thomas shrugged. "I realized I wasn't really listening to people before, just scanning them, judging. Like I was guarding the door to some club that didn't even exist." Jay nodded. "It's real out here, man. Folks don't come to Doghouse just for the ribs. They come because they feel seen. You get me?" Thomas looked down at his hands. "I do now." Jay tossed the empty can into the bin. You think Snoop's gonna come back soon? I hope so, Thomas said. I owe him more than an apology. Jay paused. You already gave one. Yeah, but I'm not sure he was the one who needed it most. That stuck in the air between them. That weekend, Thomas caught himself holding the door open for an elderly woman in a faded Lakers jersey. He didn't do it for points. He just did it. Later, a little girl asked him if Snoop ever really came to the restaurant. He knelt down and smiled. Sometimes. But if you're lucky, you'll get something even better. The mac and cheese. Her giggle was the highlight of his day. By Sunday, regulars were starting to remember his name. A man with gold-rimmed glasses shook his hand and said, "Glad you're still here, kid." He didn't ask what that meant. He already knew. In the quiet moments, when he wiped down empty tables or refilled the water jugs, he kept hearing that line, "Fix it. Not for me, for them." He was trying, really trying. It was Tuesday afternoon when the black SUV pulled up again. No fanfare, no entourage, just Snoop stepping out with a calm air, sunglasses on, hoodie up. Inside the restaurant, Thomas was wiping down menus when he saw him through the glass. His heart skipped. He stood frozen for half a beat. Then he straightened his back, tucked the cloth under his arm, and walked toward the door. "Welcome back, Mr. Broadus." Snoop nodded. "Thomas." It was the first time he'd said his name. Thomas held the door open. "Your usual booth's open." Snoop walked in slow, surveying the room. Diners turned their heads, some whispering, but no one rushed. They knew by now, this wasn't a spectacle. This was his place. When Snoop slid into the booth, Thomas was already placing down a glass of sweet tea. "Cold and fresh," he said, "just like last time." Snoop sipped it, gave a nod. "Better." Thomas hesitated. "Can I take your order?" "Same as before, but bring me something new too, surprise me." Thomas blinked. "You sure?" "Yeah, let's see what you got." Back in the kitchen, Thomas moved quickly, but deliberately. He knew exactly what to make. A new twist on the house biscuits. Flaky, buttery, laced with smoked cheddar and a touch of jalapeno honey glaze. He plated it himself, hands steady, and brought it out 5 minutes later. Snoop tried one, chewed slow, then looked up with a small smile. "You might be onto something." Thomas let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Snoop leaned back, relaxing into the booth. "Word is, you've been different." Thomas nodded. "I have." "Why?" "I realized I didn't just work in a restaurant." "I worked in your restaurant, that means something." Snoop tilted his head. "It shouldn't matter who owns it." Thomas looked him in the eye. "It doesn't. Not anymore. I treat every table like it's yours now, because everyone deserves that respect. I just didn't see it before." Snoop was quiet for a moment, then chuckled. "Now that's growth." Thomas gave a half smile. "Still learning." "You always will be," Snoop said. "That's how you know you're doing it right." A couple of fans came by the table, politely asking for a picture. Snoop agreed, but pointed at Thomas. "This man here, he's the reason today's meal hits different. Show him some love too." The fans smiled and thanked him. One shook Thomas's hand. Later, as Snoop was leaving, he paused by the counter. "You ever think about managing?" he asked. Thomas blinked. "I what?" "Kitchen, front of house, doesn't matter. I need folks who see people, not just plates. You feel me?" Thomas nodded, stunned. "Yes, I do." Snoop smiled. "Then keep going. You're doing all right." He walked out, the sun setting behind him, casting long shadows across the floor. Thomas stood still for a long moment, then turned back to the dining room. That night he stayed late, helping mop, counting tips with the crew, laughing at Jay's terrible jokes. There were no cameras, no audience, just people, doing the work, and this time, he was really part of it. 2 weeks had passed since Snoop's last visit. The buzz around the waiter incident had mostly died down, though the video had quietly made its rounds online. Someone had caught the exchange on their phone, and it ended up clipped into a TikTok montage titled, "When You Try to Kick Out the Owner." Thomas didn't read the comments, he didn't have to. He was focused on something else now. One evening, just after closing, the maitre d' called him over to the office. "He's asking for you," he said. Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Who?" But he already knew. Inside the office, Snoop sat casually behind the desk, feet up, flipping through a few printed papers. He motioned for Thomas to sit. "You still here late?" Snoop asked without looking up. "Yeah," Thomas said. "Helps to walk the floor when it's quiet. Think about the day." Snoop smiled slightly. "You sound like a manager already." Thomas hesitated. "Was that offer real?" Snoop set the papers down. "More real than this furniture." He leaned forward. "You showed me something, man, not just remorse. You showed humility, you listened, you changed. That's rare." Thomas swallowed. "Thank you." Snoop tapped the paper in front of him. "This here? It's a leadership training schedule, soft skills, conflict resolution, even some business development if you want it." Thomas blinked. "All for me?" "For whoever's ready," Snoop said. "And right now that looks like you." Silence stretched between them, comfortable. Snoop leaned back again. "I started this place for people who don't always get a seat at the table, but owning it don't mean I know everything. Sometimes I need folks who see what I don't." Thomas nodded slowly. "You saw me when I didn't even see myself." "Exactly," Snoop said. "Now you pass that on." Thomas looked down at his hands. They didn't feel like the same hands that had crossed their arms in front of a guest. They felt like hands that could build something now. "Do I get a raise?" he joked. Snoop laughed, loud and real. "Now you talkin'." They stood and shook hands, but this time it wasn't just a handshake. It was trust, a beginning. A month later, Thomas had a badge on his apron that read floor lead. He still wiped tables, still checked on orders. But now he also coached the newer servers, quietly redirecting bad habits, lifting up small wins. The kid who once judged guests by their shoes now complimented a man's worn-out sneakers, saying, "Those look comfortable as hell." The vibe in the restaurant changed, slowly, steadily. Guests returned, some brought friends. Regulars started asking for Thomas by name. One night, a couple stopped him near the entrance. "Excuse us," the woman said, "but weren't you the one in that video?" Thomas paused. "Yeah, that was me." She smiled. "Well, you handled it like a pro. We've been coming here ever since. You can feel the difference." Thomas thanked them, heart full. He turned to glance at the plaque by the front door. It still read, "Dog House, founded by Calvin Snoop Dogg Broadus." But beneath it someone had added in smaller letters, "Respect starts at the door, and Thomas." He finally understood what it meant. If this story hit you like it hit Thomas, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment with your favorite moment. And if you want more stories like this, click the video that's already on your screen. You won't want to miss what happens next.